services and facilities.
We also get access to over 1,700 hospitals and clinics.
Call 0800 Bastion, Bastion Health, the HMO that puts you.
Former President Olusegun Obasanjo has expressed concern over Nigeria's high rate of out-of-school children, warning that they could become recruits for Boko Haram and worsen the country's insecurity. According to him, the 20 million out-of-school children in Nigeria pose a significant threat to national security. The number is staggering, representing about 10% of Nigeria's population. Obasanjo stressed the urgent need to address this issue to prevent these children from falling prey to recruitment by extremist groups like Boko Haram. He also emphasized that solving the educational crisis is crucial, not only for Nigeria's development, but also for its long-term security. Joining us via Zoom for this discussion is Hamzat Lawal, CEO of Connected Development. Hamzat, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Right. This matter of out-of-school children has been an issue that has been with us for quite some time now. And the question one would ask is it so difficult, challenging to address this issue head-on?
I think it's, and let's be fair, it's a bit difficult because it's not only the role of the federal government. And if you look at education, it's on the concurrent list. So it's the state and local government that is saddled with the responsibility of education, particularly primary and secondary education. And then if you look at communities, first you must have local laws, local initiatives that would ensure that girls and boys go to school, they stay in school, and they transition in school to higher classes. So again, I think we must ensure that stakeholders come together, civil society, NGO, government, but at federal, state, and local level, traditional and religious institutions. I can even give you one example. I remember during our work in Adamawa State, because of early child marriage and the numbers of out-of-school children, we had to work with the traditional council, which we call the Emirate Council. And with just a local law, they stopped giving girls below 18-year-old for marriage, and they also passed a law that any child during school hour, if that they catch hawking, that they're going to ensure that the parents are held responsible. That's a local law. So I think we just need to do that at the scale while working with different state governors, local government chairmen and councillors to ensure we have local laws, we have enforcers, and ensure that there are adequate regulations.
And beyond the social effects and economic effect this would actually have, the former president was raising concern about the security effect in that sense. How much of a concern is this for you, especially when you look at the fact that a larger percentage of this population is in the northern part of the country?
Oh, this is a big concern. And you see, I agree with the former president. If we don't nip this by the bulk, we're literally creating grounds for recruitment of insurgents, bandits, and other criminal elements for the future. And what this means is you and I cannot go to bed. Our kids would be at risk, and this would also affect our economy. So, and if we're not careful, we might end up even electing some of these criminals into public office, because again, and so for me, why I would not even blame them is, as a country and as a people, how we investing, how we funding and preparing the next generation of leaders. Because mind you, these are the people that we hope to hand over Nigeria to in the near future. So this is a grave concern. And as Malala Fund Education Champion, from Adamawa State, now we've transitioned to Bauchi State. And why in Bauchi State is because we've seen political will, we've seen commitment. And just recently, the governor hosted an education summit to say, you know, at that time, Bauchi State had the highest number of out-of-school children in Nigeria. But now they're rolling back with even five So that means there are 4 states that are ahead of them. So what we're saying is this is a great concern, but I think most importantly, beyond having that political, we must see also funding and commitment. Yes, at the federal level, there's Agile, which has to do with adolescent girls and even boys, creating safe space for schools, ensuring that they have life skills. So beyond just getting education, they're preparing them for life skills and to collaborate more, and also giving them technical skills and hand skills. How can we scale on that? Because this is a funding from World Bank, which is about $1.5 billion. And then the federal government is giving it to state as grants so that they can support state led action in various states across Nigeria. But how can we also ensure that, one, we're able to monitor efficiency and effectiveness, and two, get other states involved? Because I know that they started with 7 or 8 states, but they're now growing interest with other states, and I think they're now making it 18 states. But that funding is not enough, because if you look at it critically, it's not enough. So how can we get more of our friends and partners from around the world, development partners, to ensure that they're able to commit to Nigeria's development? And when you look at President Tinubu's commitment around education, I think that when you also look at how universal basic education spending is now working and how some states are providing counterpart funding, we just need to scale on this. But as we scale, we must monitor, we must center all our actions around data. And I'm also excited that our conversation with the National Bureau of Statistics is yielding fruit, and how we can simplify this data and get Nigerians to trust, accept it, and use it to inform policy and decision making. But it's a great concern, and I'm glad that we're discussing education, because education is the bedrock of every nation. We must invest in the future of Nigeria, because that is what it is. We don't want to get to a point where we're not preparing the next generation of leaders. And come to think of it, it is their right as children. We're talking about children. It is their right. It is not an option. It is their right. They must go to school, they must stay in school, and they must finish school. It is our responsibility as stakeholders, as journalists, as civil society, as government, to ensure that this is done decisively and timely.
Absolutely, Hamzat. But you would also agree with me that the government have come up with several initiatives. Many administrations have come up with several initiatives to address this matter of education, out-of-school children. And we also saw in the administration of former President Goodluck Jonathan, he coming up with schools for Almajiris and the likes. But these persons did not seemingly it didn't seem attractive to them, so the schools were abandoned at the end of the day. Now, this speaks to the matter of looking at the peculiarities of various locations and how to make perhaps education attractive for these persons in such a way that they would want to go to school without being forced, and parents would want to send their children to schools. Are we perhaps looking in that direction in such a way that we make education attractive for these persons, and then how much impact will that even make?
So you see, one mistake we do is we sit in Abuja, and government officials or political officers sit in Abuja, and they just come up with an idea in their very fancy and very comfortable room. Why are we not having conversation with the people that are meant to benefit, with the people that are meant to oversee, and ask them, what is the homegrown solution? What is it that if we do, you would accept? Because again, people, if they don't take ownership, they would not see it as their own. So, and I think, again, yes, we've failed in the past, but I think it's a lesson that's created a gap. So there's a lesson here, but we must see it as an opportunity. That what made us fail, how can we do it better? Today you have other states have also adopted Almajiri and nomadic education, but it's to sit down. Or you want to also sit down with these malams where some of these children go and get Makaranta Allo. Sit with them and say, how can you inculcate curriculum and education learning in all these other spaces that they've already integrated into? But how can we effectively monitor, and how can we ensure they take ownership, while also instituting local laws to say, do not marry children below 18 years, do not allow them to go and hawk. You see, I've sat down and I've spoken to families and households, and which some of us will call low-income family and household. Why are your children not going to school? Today, governors will say education is free, but that's a lie. They're hidden charges, they're hidden fees. I went to a community in the Northeast, and I saw a girl who was crying that, she'd been sent home. Why? Because of 3,000 naira. That's less than $2. She's been sent home because she could not pay. And I asked the school, why are you asking them to pay 3,000 when the governor have already said education is free? And they said, oh, it's for exam charges, it's for PTA and whatnot. And I think that we need to have governors that we hold accountable that can also ensure that enforcement are done. If they're saying education is free, let it be free. Let's not have hidden charges, because a lot of families and households cannot afford 3,000 naira. And if you have a household that have about 3 or 5 children in school, so calculate 3,000 times 4 or 5. That's a lot of money for them. So again, it's to sit with these people and try to understand their problem, their concern, but also get solutions from them. Imagine if we get ideas from all of these people at the community level that are into Almajiri education, or even nomadic education, or even at the Makaranta Allo, sit with their malam, sit with the parents, sit with teachers. Because again, as we talk about numbers of out-of-school children, we're also talking about training of teachers, and we're also talking about remuneration, because it's a 360 approach. If you have students now in school, and I know during the school feeding program, we saw a lot of interest and enrollment. But then when you don't even, the educators themselves, because I've also asked teachers during my outreach, there are people who have been teaching for the past 15 or 18 years. They've never gone for any sort of training at all. And I'm talking about Northern Nigeria. So they got into teaching job with their NCE, and for 15, 18 years, they've been using what they learned 18, 15 years ago. And I think we need to review our curriculum, because come to think of it, the world is talking about artificial intelligence, big data. The world is talking about STEM. But when you sit with these teachers, they don't even understand what you're saying. And these are the people that are transferring knowledge to these children. So again, when you sit with parents, they say that, education is no longer attractive the way it used to be back in the days. And how can you ensure that it is attractive? Beyond providing infrastructure in school and ensuring they are safe. And I'm glad that the National Security Advisor, the Office of National, is talking about also ensuring safe spaces and, safe learning environment, so that, there will be less attack, in the infrastructure. So you provide safe space, you provide infrastructure, provide teacher training, provide incentive that ensure that it's attractive, not only for the student, but for their parents, for teachers, and the entire stakeholder, so that we can monitor effectiveness, efficiency, and timeliness of transferring knowledge and education. And, this would become a thing of the past.
We need to quickly go on a break. When we return, we'll continue this conversation with you. Just stay with us.
We don't like to eat better, more nutritious meals, more veggies, but we want it tasty and easy too. Knorr Cubes, that's the secret. Made with real ingredients like chicken, parsley, and garlic. And enriched with iron, so your meals are better for you and more delicious too. That's the cocoa. Let's give it some accolades. Change your world by changing what's on your plate.
Thank you for staying with us. Before we went on the break, we were speaking with Hamzat Lawal, who is the CEO of Connected Development, on the statement made by former President Olusegun Obasanjo talking about the 20 million out-of-school children in Nigeria and how they pose a significant threat in terms of security. Now, Hamzat, we have seen the effort from NGOs and the likes towards addressing this matter. But it seems like we haven't scratched the surface as it is, because we still have data, and it seems the number is increasing as it is. You have just mentioned that some parents cannot even afford 3,000 naira, and we know the economic situation as it is. If we are to approach this holistically, are there still low-hanging fruits so that we can address or begin with right now, from your perspective?
Yes, there are low-hanging fruit. First is for every stakeholder to accept the data that has been released, because a lot of stakeholders are still hell-bent on 14.5. Some are saying 10 million, and there's a data that talks about 20 million out-of-school children. I think the stakeholders is first to accept the numbers. After accepting the numbers, then we can plan with the numbers, and the plan has to be holistic. But also leverage on the opportunity of Agile. Federal government has accessed this, this window of credit from the World Bank, which is, first it was $550 million and now is $1.5 billion. So they've doubled their resources. And this is going to state as grant. I think that opportunity allows for state to get resources for infrastructure, processes and system, creating safe space for adolescent boys and girls, working with stakeholders like malams, imam, traditional leaders and traditional institutions. And also, states are also engaged in the school, homegrown school feeding program, but at the state level, engaging vendors and also stimulating local economy. These are low-hanging fruits. But as we also do this, we're also collecting data to see what are we learning, what is working, what are the challenges, what are the bottlenecks, and how can we do better. And then when we get to this, then we can scale at a larger, we can scale at a larger number, catching all the 36 states and the FCT. But then how are we also investing in teachers? How are we investing in needed infrastructure? Because every stakeholder sort of have their role to play. Are we also looking at curriculum? Are we looking at, okay, what are the technical skills or knowledge or life skills we can imbibe on this people or the student as they go through education and learning environment? So it must be a holistic approach. And I think the low-hanging fruit must start with data, using existing resources and then scaling up on these resources, but also ensuring there's accountability and transparent mechanism in this entire value chain.
And talking about low-hanging fruit, at the root of all of this are also, religious and cultural ideologies. How possible is it to, detach some of these parents on some of these beliefs? And perhaps we should be looking at a more stringent approach in terms of ensuring compliance. Should we stay on awareness, continuous advocacies, or we should be looking into putting more laws in place to ensure that those who fall prey of this are punished?
I think we have more than enough laws, and I think there is a legal and regulatory framework. I agree we need to invest more in awareness, sensitization awareness, and raising their consciousness. I also think we need to bring our pastors, imams, and traditional leaders in the room. Because you see, every religion actually supports education. Because if you look at Islam, for instance, the first thing that it talks about is Iqra. And it talks about, learning, and that you can even cross seas to go and get knowledge and learning. So yes, the traditional norms and beliefs that sort of impede education and learning, particularly for girls, because it's quite targeted and it's quite it's unique for girls. So I think we need to bring these people in the room so that they can start preaching. They can, we want to see pastors on the podium, see imams, on the podium, and also traditional religious institutions during their town hall meetings or even during their sittings as traditional leaders to talk about the importance of education, the importance of girls and boy child education, and why parents must adhere to this. And, you have local laws that penalize and hold them to account when their children are not in school. But then when they send their children to school, ensure that nobody abuse their children, ensure that nobody attack the school, kidnap or even kill any child. Because again, what we've seen is this fear in the minds of parents that, when we send our children to school, they get kidnapped or they get attacked by the insurgents. So we must ensure that there's adequate protection from either predators or the insurgents or, all these criminal elements, so that, it becomes attractive. But government must play her role, as we expect for parents and other stakeholders to play their own role. But sensitization is key. We must continue to educate, inform, and sensitize the general public. Because again, if you want to enforce, you need information. So if neighbors, if community members are the one calling law enforcement and say, we saw this child on the street, then you see it will go a long way to ensure that parents will know that if they don't send their children to school, even if they hide them in their bedroom, their neighbors and other community members will report them and they'll be held accountable.
If I hear you correctly, Hamzat, you've spoken about the matter of insecurity, talking about the kidnap of school children. That is also a contributing factor. Is that what you're saying, to the number of out-of-school children?
It is. It is. It is, actually.
Right. Now, talking about creating awareness, we have seen NGOs and several organizations across the country, keep pushing this matter of awareness. So what do you think is the missing link, such that we are not achieving the desired result so far?
I think we can leave awareness only for civil society or even the media, because I remember TVC Community Forum, working with Sarah. We've been to so many communities, even in Adamawa. She was with us with your crew to document some of our impact and some of the challenges around education and how Nigeria is achieving the SDGs. We've literally traveled with Community Forum to all the 6 geopolitical zones, and we want to see that we can do more. But how can we translate this knowledge and information to local language? Have radio jingles, have community radios, have various town hall meetings talking about the same thing, using the same wordings but in different language. In Fufude, in Hausa, in Yoruba and Igbo, in different languages, in different platforms, but at a larger scale. But not only civil society or NGOs, but also the media taking upon themselves as corporate social responsibility, but also the government providing resources to the media, to civil society, or to NGOs, and to community leaders to do this very important work.
So do you agree with those who think that perhaps we should start rethinking education in such a way that our local languages is what is used to teach children?
Oh, yes, absolutely, I agree. And, we had a debate at the Bauchi State Education Summit. We must also come up with homegrown solutions. Yes, we must teach in local languages. And, even within the curriculum, this is what you call the mother tongue. A lot of us, the first language we learned was not English. It was our local language. So whatever language our mother, hails from, that's what every child learns first, mother tongue. So why can't we continue to teach in that trajectory, so that we can even sell Nigeria to the world? Because, we're a very rich and vast country with different languages and culture. Why can't we imbibe this in our educational curriculum, learnings and teaching? So I absolutely agree. Because you see, learning itself is not just about the 4 walls of the classroom. It's not also about English language.
And let's also talk about, IDP camps, which in the past, especially by security agencies, have, said that sometimes these locations serve as, a place for recruitment of young persons into extremist group. How can the government, manage this situation, taking into consideration the level of, displacement that we still have in the country?
I think most time we get really emotional when we engage in internally displaced persons conversation. I think first is, government is the one who designates and regulates IDP camps. But you see, today you have so many IDP camps that is not under government's jurisdiction because of the level of crisis and the level of devastation, either by natural resources, natural disaster rather, or by all the security threats and attack. I think first is to ensure that government is able to designate IDP camps, take data on who are the people in these IDP camps, and also to be able to connect them to their community. And I think we cannot only leave it to government. Yes, we've seen reports, we've had how some of these IDP camps continue to be recruitment grounds, not only for insurgents, but also for substance abuse and intake. I've been to some of these IDP camps, and, I see young people taking hard drugs and becoming either joining various criminal gangs or cults. So I think this is something we must also critically address. I know that some organizations have done makeshift education facility in this camp to ensure that children are able to get knowledge even while at this IDP camp. So like FlexiSAP's Foundation, I know that's one thing they're really investing their donation to do, but I think we need more of that. But we also need government to regulate some of this camp and maybe designate some of this camp and have different layers of approach in terms of when they designate them based on the population, the size, and the amount of people at this camp. But again, we're not a country at war, so we shouldn't have many IDP camps. I know that there's also learning around reintegration, so because I think there's a lesson to learn from Borno State, because Borno State government has also been able to transition from just having camps to having some of these people reintegrated back to their communities. And I think one thing we need to provide them is access to water, provide resources around, and maybe even teach them some life skills or handcraft, provide resources as grants, how they start small businesses so that they can go back to, their ancestral land and homes.
Absolutely.
Really, nobody wants to stay in camp because it takes dignity away from humanity.
All right, one last question I would like to ask, because you've been speaking about the matter of data. There are those who have even queried this figure of 20 million, saying that the figure might just not reflect the true reality, because when we talk about out-of-school children, it's actually in phases. There are those who do not go to school at all. There are those who have gone to schools, primary school, and are not returning to school. And there are those who do their junior WAEC, and that's the end of it for them. If you are to interrogate the data as it is this a true reflection?
You see, data is meant to be questioned and interrogated. In short, data is controversial. But I think the stakeholders who want solution, and if we get this data from the National Bureau of Statistics, which is saddled with the mandates, the constitutional mandates, we ensure that government have information to make decision for our citizens, then we should accept the data. Even if we have issues with the data, we can take it up with the National Bureau of Statistics. We can call for stakeholders meeting to further get clarity from the National Bureau of Statistics. But I think now is not the time to interrogate or dismiss the data. Now is the time to find solutions using the existing data. And mind you, data are collected periodically. And if we make gains, it will reflect in the data, and I'm sure the numbers will go down. But now is the time to support the National Bureau of Statistics, accept the data, come up with homegrown solutions, work with stakeholders, and ensure that no child is out of school and Nigeria can be prosperous.
And that's a fine place to leave the conversation. Hamzat Lawal, CEO of Connected Development, thank you for your time on the program.
Thank you for having me. Bye-bye now.
You're welcome. And still to come on The Breakfast Show, how important is vaccination in eradicating polio? Join us after the break to find out.